Nope, it's on now. It's okay.
Shall I go? Okay. Okay, so I'm Cressida, and my talk today is on intelligence and IQ. Just because I was thinking about how to define intelligence and also about IQ testing. Obviously, it's quite a big deal, especially because I know that a couple of my friends, they've applied for like PGCEs. I'm looking at jobs, and I know they've got quite a few tests to measure different aspects of your personality and stuff, and I was just thinking about the validity of these. So what is intelligence? Terman in 1921 described it as the ability to carry on abstract thinking, whilst Burt in 1955 said it was innate general cognitive ability. And in psychology there's a massive debate as to what intelligence is, and it's one of those things that really people are finding it really hard to define. Obviously it's used to describe differences in people's characters and a way to explain behaviour. So you might describe someone as being bright, dim, quick-witted, a bit slow. But obviously defining it is tricky. Another thing is one person might be exceptional at music while another is exceptional at maths, but both might be poor at English literature. So why should they be marked down or called less intelligent just because one part holds them back, so to speak? So Sternberg in 1984 said that we must recognise the cultural context. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So different IQ tests, I'm sure you've all done them before, include the Simon Binet, Stanford, the Wechsler and the British Ability Test. The Wechsler test, I don't know how to pronounce his name, is for adults, and it's not just verbal. It's arrangement of blocks, pictures, other displays as well, so it's trying to measure a broad range of skills rather than just English, maths and verbal reasoning, which is a lot of children's tasks are. So obviously the tasks that we've got at the moment, they're useful as they give a measure. We have no other ways of doing it apart from obviously examinations in your different subjects. But uncertainties in the definition mean that you can't really have a true value. For example, weights and measurements, we know that a pound is a pound. So we know that 60 pounds is half as heavy as someone that is at 120 pounds. But if you say that someone with an IQ of 60 is half as intelligent as someone with an IQ of 120, it doesn't make any sense, because does anyone have an IQ of 0? And also, how can you define it? So obviously there's quite a lot of problems. As you can tell, maybe I'm not supportive of the old IQ testing, but obviously reliability, validity and standardisation. The first time you take a test, you might get an average score, but the more you take the test, the higher your scores improve, which shows that obviously the more you practice, the more it's going to come up as you're doing better, but that doesn't necessarily reflect your intelligence. The conditions that the test is taken in have quite a big effect on the results as well. And people that are testing need to be aware of the assumptions that can cause bias as well. And like, as I already mentioned, test scores are not stable over time after as well. So obviously each year you're learning more, gaining more skills. Does that mean you have to take the test every single year or month, depending on... Another problem is that there's quite a few people rely on these scores for just career areas. So you might say, oh, I've got a high IQ, so I'm going to do something really academic. If you've got a low IQ, you might feel that you can't do something more academic, which I think is stupid, because like I say, we haven't got a proper foolproof test. And obviously the culture element is quite a big one too. You probably all heard this, but the tests are biased towards white middle class people, and they're also heavily based on the culture they were designed. Vernon, 1969, reflects the view of many psychologists when he says that there's no such thing as a culture fair test, because every culture is completely different in so many ways. For example, hunting from an outrigger canoe in Indonesia, men that can do that successfully and hunt fish and animals for their families and for their groups, they're seen as highly intelligent and like the top people, but obviously in the Western culture it's completely different. We don't need to do anything like that, so it's not considered. So to conclude, obviously intelligence is a broad area. With no clear definition, it's really hard to measure properly. And as I say, one that's bright in one area might not be in another, so it's not a true reflection. So I think the problems outweigh the benefits of the test, so education could really benefit from a more foolproof system. Thank you. Any questions?
I did my first blog on IQ as well, and I tried to find a way of like re-evaluating how we can sort of establish better IQ tests in education. I come across Gardner's theory of intelligence.
I think I have done because someone commented on my blog with a bit of information on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's, they said that IQ tests they tend to focus on just spatial, mathematical, and linguistics.
Yeah.
And like you said as well, like Gardner also found that we are only as good at doing IQ tests at that time. The more we do them, the better we are. And Gardner said that perhaps we should propose a different definition which adds 8 extra elements to intelligence.
Yeah.
And he suggested things to be intelligence that others would consider ability. So he said there was sporting intelligence, there was
Yeah.
artistic intelligence and things. Do you agree with that? That other subjects such as arts and history and things like that, just because they're not the traditional maths English
Yeah.
subjects, if you have a knowledge in that area, that is an intelligence. So do you think we should re-evaluate it to perhaps incorporate all similar subjects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of things, especially in jobs now and stuff, they're really looking for people that are an all-rounder as well. So I think it's really important to home in on the different things. I mean, like for instance, musical ability. I mean, there's maths elements in music, you know, like counting, timing, things like that. So yeah, I think it's really important to do an overview. I mean, maybe you can have a section which is just focusing on the linguistics element, and then the sort of, you know, like you say, the ability section as well. But I think it's important to look at all the different elements of what we're learning. I mean, we're learning about them, so they're obviously important. Anything else? Good.